Okay, hello everyone. All right, so the next program in chapter 6 is days in a month. All right, so write a class named MonthDays. The class's constructor should accept two arguments: an integer for the month, for example, 1 is equal to January, 2 is equal to February, etc., and an integer for the year. The class should have a method named getNumberOfDays that returns the number of days in the specified month. The method should use the following criteria to identify leap years. Now, determine whether the year is divisible by 100. If it is, then it is a leap year. If and if only it is divisible by 400. For example, 2000 is a leap year, but 2100 is not. If the year is not divisible by 100, then it is a leap year if and if only it is divisible by 4. For example, 2008 is a leap year, but 2009 is not. Demonstrate the class in a program that asks the user to enter the month, letting the user enter an integer in the range of 1 through 12 and the year. The program should then display the number of days in that month. Here is a sample run of the program. So assuming the user enters, let's say 2, okay, the user has to enter either 1 through 12 to represent the month, so 2 for February, and enters the year 2008. Now, because 2008 is a leap year, because over here it said 2008 is a leap year, but 2009 is not. Now, because 2008 is a leap year, February gets an extra day to make it 29 days. But if it's not a leap year, then February gets 28 days. Okay, now we know February gets 29 days every leap year and 28 days, every other year. So we're supposed to create a class to kind of simulate this, right? And it will make more sense as we construct the class. All right, so let's do that. So let's start by defining the class. I'm going to go ahead and create a public class. Okay, it's a public class because I want it to be available to code outside of this. I want it to be available to code outside of this class itself. Okay. So public class, I'm going to call it days in a month. That's how I'm going to go ahead and call the class. All right. So now we have to define the fields. Over here it says, well, let me close this. Right. So the class's constructor should accept two arguments: an integer for the month, and an integer for the year. All right. So this tells us that the class is going to have these as fields, the month and the year as fields. So let's go ahead and define those fields. I'm going to go ahead and define a private int, and I'm going to call it month. Okay, we know that month is one of the fields in this class. I'm defining it as private because I don't want code outside of this class to be able to directly change the content of this field or even see the content of this field. I want code outside of this class to be able to use methods that I'm going to define, or we'll probably define. Well, this question didn't say we should, but normally you define accessors and mutators with it. So I want code outside of this class to be able to use other means to be able to see the content of this class and to be able to change the contents of this class. I don't want them to be able to directly see and change the content of this field. I don't want them to be able to see or change the content of this field that directly. I want them to use other means to be able to see and change the content of this field. That's why I'm defining it as private. Private meaning that only code in this class is able to use or able to directly access and see the content of the class and change the content of this. Only code in this class is able to view the content of this field and change the content of this field. All right. So that's why I'm defining it as private. So as a matter of fact, I'm going to define all of them as private. So the second field that I'm going to go ahead and create is also going to be a private int. Okay. And it's going to be called year. Now, int for month because it said an integer for month. Okay. 1 through 12. Okay. Each one representing a month. And then int for year because the year is going to be an integer. 2008, 2009, 2010, and so on. All right, so now we're done with the fields. All right. So the next thing we're going to do is create is the constructor. Over here it says write a class named MonthDays. The class's constructor should accept 2 arguments. So we know we're going to go ahead and create a constructor, right? So I'm going to create a public. Now the constructor is just like a method, right? With some differences. So I'm going to go ahead and create a public constructor because this constructor is what code outside of this class is going to use to create an object from this class. So you have to make it public so they can use it to create an object from this class. So that's why it's public. So public. Now with constructors, it doesn't have a return type because we are not the ones who call it explicitly. We don't go ahead and call it ourselves. This method is going to be automatically called when we try to create, or when someone tries to create an object from this class. They are automatically called, and because we are not the ones who call it, it can't return anything. Like, it doesn't have a return type, so we don't specify a return type because we are not the ones who call it. It can't return anything, so we don't specify a return type. It also doesn't have the keyword static. Okay, it doesn't have a keyword static, so it's just public and then the name of the constructor. Now the name of the constructor has to be the same as the name of the class. In this case, the name of the class is days in a month. So I'm going to go ahead and name the constructor also as days in a month, exactly as the name of the class. Now, apart from that, it looks just like a method. It has the 2 parentheses for arguments, if any. So let's see. It says the constructor should accept 2 arguments. So we know already that it's going to accept 2 arguments. So since it's going to accept 2 arguments, we have to define parameters for it. So the first argument is an integer for the month field, right? So let's go ahead and define a parameter for the month field. So we know the month is an integer, so I'm going to define an integer type, and I'm going to call it month given. Month given is just a name for this parameter. Okay, whatever the user types in here is going to replace the month field over here. And then the second parameter is going to be for the year, so I'm going to name it as year given. Okay, so once we have these values, once we have these values by whoever calls this constructor, we can now set the month field to the month given, the month that was given or was passed into this constructor when it was called, and then we can set the year also to. Oops, sorry, my typing is bad. The year also to the year given by whoever called this constructor. Okay, so now we're done with our constructor. Now normally I want my constructor as the last thing in the class, so I'll just go ahead and shift it down. But you can have it up, you can have it pretty much anywhere. I mean, you can have it before, you can have it not before, these fields, but you can have it before any other methods, or, but I normally like to have it mine as the last thing in the class, just because that's how I learned it, but I mix it around. Okay, so let's move on. Over here it says the class should have a method named getNumberOfDays that returns the number of days in the specified month. The method should use the following criteria to identify leap years, right? So let's create that method. Let's create that method getNumberOfDays. Okay, so I'm going to create a regular method. It's going to be a public method because, again, I want to make this public because code outside of this class, okay, or let's say whoever is writing the program to use this class can now use this method I'm about to create to do whatever it's supposed to do. So I'm making it public, right? But the fields I'm making it private. Okay, so this method I'm going to call it, well before that, so it's going to be a public method, right? Now this is going to be an instance method. Now an instance method is any method that directly works on the fields of an object created from this class. Okay, now because this method is going to get number of days, get to the number of days of an object that's created from this class, because it's going to use these fields to figure out the number of days, it's an instance method. And with instance methods, you don't add the keyword static to it. For now, just know that instance methods don't go with the keyword static. Okay, when we move on to chapter 8, we'll talk more about it. But for now, just know that instance methods don't have the keyword static. Okay, but this method has a return type, if any. Apart from that, it looks just like a regular method. So let's see, is it going to return anything? It says get number of days. Okay, so we know we are getting something, so it's going to return it. If we are calling this method to get the number of days, then it's going to return the number of days. And we know the days is going to be an integer. It's either 5 days or 20. Oh, sorry. Well, I'm using the wrong example. In month, either 30 days or 29 days or 28 days or 31 days, right? So we know that days is going to be an integer. So let's set the return type to be an integer. So public int. Like I said, no keyword static because it's an instance method, and instance methods don't have the keyword static. Now we have to specify the name of this method. So public int, we have the name here as get number of days. So get number of days like this. All right. Now, in order to accurately get the number of days, we've been told how to figure out a leap year, because we're going to use a leap year to also we're going to use code to figure out if whatever year the person typed is a leap year, and that is going to actually factor into calculating our number of days. Okay, so let's focus on that. All right, so get the number of days. Let's see. It's not, first of all, it's not going to accept in any argument, so I'm not going to define any parameters. Okay, because it's going to use the value stored in the month field actually and the year field to basically calculate the number of days. So we don't need anything else here. We are all set with these fields. So first of all, let's see, get number of days. Well, we know that if the month is 1, right, then we know the number of days. So based on how many days are in January. So 30 days have September, April, June, and November. All the rest have 31, right? So January, we know that there are 31 days. So we know that already. So we can start coding that. But once we get to February has 28 days, every other year, but then 29 days every leap year. So we have to first figure out if that year is a leap year, and then assign the right number of days in the program, right? So whether 21 or 28. So let's use a switch statement for this. Although you can use an if statement for this, let's use a switch statement for this and create some kind of a structure where, based on the month, we assign the right number of days to, let's say, a days variable and return it, right? Because get number of days is basically going to return the number of days, right? So let's start a switch statement. And what we are switching on, or basically what we are switching on, is basically the month field over here. Okay, so once we create an object, we're going to initialize it with the constructors. We're going to initialize it with the month and then the year. So we'll have the month and year here. So based on the month, okay, we are going to do something. So this switch statement, all what this is saying is, based on switch between the options we are going to type in this block based on the value of this month. Okay, switch between the cases we are going to type in this month based on the value of switch between the cases we are going to type in this switch block based on the value of this month. Okay, that's what I'm trying to say. I think I'm talking too fast. I think I should slow down a bit. All right, so when I'm doing this, I get very excited. So that's why I talk like that. But yeah, hopefully you're following too, and yeah. So in the case where month is 1, we know that the days is going to be, let's say, 31, right? Because they're going to be 31 days in January. So let's go ahead and define a variable here, call it days, and set it to 0 initially. Okay, because we're going to assign days the right number of days based on the value of month. So in the case, so like I said, based on the cases we're going to type here, we're going to switch between the cases here. We're going to switch between the cases here based on the value of month. So in the case where month is 1, let's set days to be equal to, or we can even call it number of days. number of days, just to be more specific. So let's set number of days to 31, right? We can we can leave this blank here. We'll set number of days to something, right? You set I'll just leave it as 31. That's fine. I wanted to use some kind of a poem that I learned when I was a kid to figure out the number of days, but it's fine. I'll do that for the rest, and then once we're done with all of it, once I'm done writing all of it, we'll just figure it out. Okay, so in the case where number of days is in the case where month is 1, number of days is 31. And then let's break out of the loop because we don't want it falling through, because that's how switch statements work. So let's copy this and then emulate it here. In the case where the month is 2, that's February. Now February has 29 days in a leap year and 28 days in every other year. Okay, so for now, let's just leave it as 28, okay, for every other year, and then we'll come back to this block and fix it. I want to go ahead and type the rest. We'll come back to the February block. So let me just paste this a couple more times. Let's see. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's a long one. All right. Now there are certainly other advanced ways to do this, but we haven't gotten there yet. We are only in chapter 6, and chapter 6 covers only up to classes all the way down. No, we haven't covered arrays or anything. So we are using the things we've learned so far. All right. So number of days. For now, let's go ahead and set the days. So back to the point I was talking about. All right. So 30 days have September. Okay. 30 days have September. So let's change the month as well. So that's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That's it. I was about to type 13. I'm like, whoa. All right. So January, February, March, April, May, January, February. We can even put comments here just to January, February, March, April, May. Just so we can keep track. I mean, we know that already. August, just so we can keep track. All right. And then November, December. All right. So just so we can keep track.